Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we are looking at something so familiar, maybe too familiar. We're going to take the Lord's Prayer and really slow down, looking at just the very first line.
Reformed thinking.
And what's amazing is how that one line, that one opening, contains a truly radical reorientation for everything.
It does. We often say it so fast we just miss it. But our sources for this deep dive, they're all focused on the exegesis of that opening. Matthew 6.9, Our Father in heaven, hallowed be your name.
And that's our mission today, to pull out the theological and, the structural truths in that single verse that really set up the controlling aim for a believer's entire life.
It's about shifting prayer from a kind of spiritual checklist for ourselves to a God-centered act of worship. It's a total recalibration.
So let's start where Jesus started, because before he gives the model, the right way to pray, he spends a good bit of time clearing the ground.
He has to.
He corrects what prayer is not. And in this context, from Matthew 6, verses 5 to 8, it's just so necessary. The Lord's Prayer only makes sense when you see what it was replacing.
That's right. Jesus exposes two great distortions that were common then, and, if we're honest, are just as common now.
What are they?
It comes down to wrong motives and wrong theology. You can have a prayer that sounds, perfectly fine, but if the motives behind it is rotten, it's worthless to God.
And on the other hand,
You can have a motive that feels sincere, but if your idea of God is all wrong, well, your prayer is basically pagan.
so let's take the first one, the motive problem. Our sources call this the exposure of hypocritical practice, a distorted motive.
The behavior Jesus points to is really visual. He talks about people praying in public, in the synagogues, on the wide street corners.
And the location itself isn't the problem, is it?
No, not at all. The problem is the motive. He says they do it so they may be seen by others. It's a performance.
So the real audience in their mind isn't God.
No, it's the people watching. They aren't seeking communion with God. They're trying to build up a reputation. They're using prayer to get social capital, to look spiritual.
It's spiritual showmanship.
Absolutely. The goal is the applause of men. It's an ancient version of what we see all over the place today. You could think of the person whose social media posts about their prayer life are more crafted than their actual prayers.
Right. They're using the idea of prayer to promote themselves.
And Jesus is just. He's brutal in his assessment of this. He says they have received their reward in full.
That sounds very final, like a business transaction.
It is. The Greek verb there, it implies they've been paid off completely, like a receipt that's been stamped, paid in full. The reward they wanted was human approval, and they got it.
So that's it. Account closed.
Account closed. Since they were never really looking for God in the first place, they don't get an audience with him.
The analogy from our source material was really helpful here. It's like someone writing a love letter to their father, but instead of sending it, they get up on a stage and read it out loud to a crowd to show everyone what a great son they are.
Yeah, that's it. You've just used your father's name for your own show. So the correction Jesus gives is designed to completely purify that motive.
Go into your room and shut the door.
Right. Go into your room, shut the door, and pray in secret. The action itself, the physical withdrawal, is a tool to isolate your motive. When there's no human audience left to impress, you're forced to seek only the Father's gaze.
So this isn't a rule against all public prayer then?
No, not at all. It's a command to fix your intent. It's a kind of spiritual hygiene. You have to make sure you understand that God is the real audience, the only one that matters.
It's a good gut check. If my public prayer life is more impressive than my private one, I might be in that danger zone.
You might have already been paid in full. And that leads right into the second big correction. We move from the who of prayer to the how and why.
Okay, so this is the distorted theology, the exposure of pagan practice.
This is more about the mechanics. Jesus talks about heaping up empty phrases or the belief that you'll be heard because of your many words.
And the issue isn't just long prayers, right? Daniel prayed long prayers. Jesus himself did.
No, the length isn't the problem. It's the theology behind the length. The pagan idea in Roman and Greek religions was that their gods were distant or maybe just busy or even unwilling to help.
So you had to get their attention.
You had to get their attention. So they would use these repetitive chants or a long list of a god's titles, believing that the sheer volume of words or maybe some magic in the formula would force the god to listen.
It's that vending machine analogy. The machine is stuck, so you have to kick it a few times or push the buttons in a secret sequence to make it work.
That's a perfect way to put it. It's a pressure campaign. And it assumes God is defective in some way. Either he's ignorant and you have to give him a full report,
Or he's inattentive and you have to shout to get him to look up.
or he's unwilling
Yeah.
and you have to badger him into being generous. Any way you slice it, it's a very low view of God.
I can see how easily we can slip into that, though. Even using all the right Christian words, when we get anxious that we haven't prayed enough about something or we try to bargain with God.
That's the mechanical view creeping back in.
Yeah.
And Jesus says this approach is functionally godless. It's not praying to the Father of the Bible. It's praying to a God you've invented who needs your help to do his job.
So the correction isn't a new technique. It's just a statement of fact, a piece of pure counter-theology.
It is. In verse 8, he just says it. Your Father knows what you need before you ask him.
And that one sentence just demolishes the entire pagan framework.
It does. Because if God is all-knowing, he doesn't need your information. If he's attentive, he isn't distracted. And if he is a loving Father, he isn't reluctant.
So prayer stops being an anxious effort to twist God's arm.
And it becomes an expression of trust, of confidence and dependence on his character. It's less about informing God and more about aligning our own hearts with what he already knows and what he's already doing.
That changes the whole tone of prayer.
It changes everything. We come with humility because he's God, but also with this incredible confidence because he is Father.
And that sets the stage perfectly for the model prayer itself. After clearing away the hypocrisy and the bad theology, Jesus gives the command.
Pray then like this.
And the sources we're looking at, they really zoom in on a couple of small Greek words right there. Let's start with oun, which is translated as then or therefore.
It's so easy to just read past it, but it's not just a transition word. It's a logical engine.
It's a hinge. It connects everything he just said to everything he's about to say.
Yes, the logic is. Because the Father already knows what you need, from verse 8, therefore your prayer should follow this confident, trusting pattern, not a frantic, begging one.
If you skip verse 8, the prayer doesn't have the same foundation.
It doesn't. We're not coming to an unaware or unwilling God. We're coming to a capable, loving Father. So our prayer needs to be ordered. It has to prioritize what he prioritizes.
And that brings us to the other word, hutos, like this. The sources are really clear that this isn't Jesus giving us a magic formula to recite.
No, if it were just a formula, we'd be right back in the pagan trap, thinking the words themselves have some kind of power. Instead, he's giving us a paradigm, a template.
A blueprint for how to pray.
A blueprint for all Christian devotion, really. It dictates the structure, the priorities, the tone. It shows us that the very first thing we must do when we come to God is adore him and align ourselves with who he is and what he's doing.
So the structure itself is a lesson. The order matters.
The order is everything. And if we jump straight to our own needs, we're ignoring the blueprint he gave us.
Which brings us to Matthew 6.9, the address itself, our Father in heaven. Our sources call this a miniature confession of God's character.
It's this beautiful compression of God's closeness and his absolute, well, his otherness. And it establishes the only right posture for a believer before God.
Let's start with that first word, our. It seems simple, but in our modern world, it's pretty jarring.
It really is. We live in such an individualistic culture. Everything is about my experience, my truth, my personal relationship with Jesus.
And the moment Jesus says, our Father, he just hits the brakes on all of that.
He does. It immediately frames this as the family prayer of the people of God. Even if you're praying it alone in your room, you are consciously praying as part of a community.
It forces you out of your own head.
It trains you out of self-absorption and into what you could call a family mindset. I mean, think about the practical side of this.
Yeah.
Can you honestly pray, Our Father, if you are holding on to bitterness or, resentment against another believer, another one of his children?
No, not genuinely. The first word of the prayer is a demand for reconciliation. It forces you to see your own needs as part of a much bigger picture.
It relativizes your own agenda. You're approaching God as one among a huge family of the redeemed. So that starting line requires unity.
That's a huge challenge, and it leads right into the heart of it, the word Father. The sources call this a gospel word.
It is a gospel word. Jesus is giving his disciples a status that was almost unheard of. In the Old Testament, you have these titles of transcendence, King, Lord, Mighty One. But to come to God as Abba, which is the intimate Aramaic term Jesus would have used, that's revolutionary.
It defines prayer as a privilege of adoption. It's not a right we have by nature.
That's a key point. Scripture is clear that in our fallen state, we're estranged from God. We're children of wrath. So to be able to call him Father means something radical has happened.
A redemptive action. The cross.
The barrier of guilt that was created by our sin has been removed by the work of Christ. It affirms that God is personal, he's attentive, he's committed to his kids.
And that's what makes the pagan view so wrong. We don't have to badger or manipulate him because he's already for us, not because we deserve it, but because he chose to adopt us.
And our sources are very careful here doctrinally. They insist this is a covenant status. It's for those who are in the Son.
This guards against that more liberal idea of a universal fatherhood of God, where everyone is a child of God by default.
Right, because if everyone is a child of God just by being human, then what's the point of adoption? The cross becomes, well, it becomes unnecessary for reconciliation.
The beauty of calling him Father is tied directly to the cost of making us his children.
But that intimacy, if it's not balanced, can slide into a kind of casual disrespect. And that's why the address immediately gives us the counterweight.
In heaven.
In heaven. This phrase pulls us back. It reminds us of his majesty.
And our sources say this isn't a location, like a point on a map.
No, it's a theological marker. Heaven is shorthand for the throne room of the king. It's about his transcendence. He isn't just our nice dad who lives next door. He's infinitely exalted above all creation.
This is the correction to what some call the domesticated deity.
Yes. If you only focus on Father, you can end up with this sentimental idea of a cosmic grandfather figure whose only job is to make you feel good and give you what you want.
But in heaven reminds us that this Father is also the sovereign king, the one who sits in the heavens and does whatever he pleases. He has absolute power and authority.
So when we acknowledge he's in heaven, our intimacy is balanced by a reverent awe, a holy fear. We aren't just chatting with a pal. We are bowing before a king.
And that creates the synthesis, the correct posture for prayer.
Right. If you lean too hard on Father, you lose reverence.
Right.
If you lean too hard on in heaven, you lose assurance. True Christian prayer holds both together, immanence and transcendence.
So we avoid the groveling slave mentality, which is all fear and no access.
And we avoid the chummy equal mentality, which is all access and no reverence.
Both are wrong.
Both are wrong. This balance refutes deism, which is the idea of a distant clockmaker god who isn't involved. But it also refutes what you could call sentimentalism, this idea of a therapeutic god who just offers comfort.
The analogy that really brought this home for me was the prince or princess in the throne room.
It's such a great picture. Imagine you're that adopted child. You walk into the throne room and you see the crown and the scepter. You see the symbols of the king's absolute majesty, the power that makes nations tremble. And so you bow.
You have to. He is the ultimate authority.
But then, because of adoption, you look up and you see the face of the one who loves you, who brought you into the family. So you bow because he is king, but you can speak freely with confidence because he's your father.
The right to climb onto his lap is held together with the knowledge that he wears the crown.
That posture of confident reverence, that's the only way to come to God. Who we are talking to determines how we talk.
Okay, so that address sets our posture. The very next phrase, the first actual request, sets our priority. Hallowed be your name.
And this is maybe the biggest shock in the whole prayer. Before we say a word about our needs, our food, our forgiveness, the first priority is God's reputation.
This is where we find that governing aim for all of Christian life. Let's start with what it means. What is hallowed?
The Greek verb is hagiazo. It means to sanctify, to set apart, to treat as holy, to recognize something as utterly separate and pure.
But the grammar is really specific here, isn't it? Our sources call it an aorist passive imperative.
Let's unpack that. The imperative part means it's a command, but since we're praying to God, it works as a request. Let your name be sanctified.
Okay, but what about the passive part? That seems strange.
This is what they call the divine passive. It implies that God himself is the one doing the action. We're not just asking that people would try harder to respect God's name.
What are we asking then?
We're asking God to act. The prayer is, Father, please work in the world and in me in such a way that your own holiness is recognized and revered by everyone. We're asking him to magnify his own reputation.
So we're asking God to make himself known for who he truly is.
And name here isn't just a title like Yahweh or Jesus. It's his whole revealed character, his justice, his mercy, his sovereignty, his wrath against sin. We're asking that everything God has revealed about himself be honored as supreme.
And the fact that this petition comes first, this reorders everything for us.
It does. It becomes the theological center of the prayer. God's glory is the #1 concern before any of our personal needs. It's a direct assault on our natural self-centeredness.
It dismantles that idea of prayer as a spiritual wish list.
Or what the sources call functional atheism. That's the view where we say we believe in God, but we treat him like a cosmic helper for our agenda. His job is to make our lives work better.
We see that in a lot of, health and wealth teaching or therapeutic religion.
And this prayer just flips that upside down. It puts God back on the throne as the end goal of everything. The only reason we ask for daily bread later is so that we can have the strength to keep living for the priority, which is hallowing his name.
So every other request we make has to be connected back to this one.
It's nested underneath it. If I pray for a new job, the highest reason isn't so I can have a bigger house. It's so I can better use my gifts to serve him and bring him glory.
This has huge implications then for how we live our lives, for our personal conduct.
It's massive. If I pray, hallowed be your name, I'm also praying for my own personal holiness.
Why is that?
Because as Christians, we bear Christ's name.
Yeah.
If a believer is living in open, unrepentant sin, they are actively profaning the very name they claim to honor. Our lives reflect on his reputation.
So the prayer becomes a commitment. Let my life reflect your holiness so your name isn't dragged through the mud because of me.
Exactly. And it has just as big implications for the church when it gathers for worship.
It changes how you would measure a successful church service.
It does. The main question is no longer, did people have a good time? Or was the music cool? Or did we attract a big crowd?
The question becomes,
was God's name, his character, honored in truth and spirit? That forces a church to look at everything it does. Worship has to be ordered, reverent, and full of Scripture, because that's what honors him, not just what's entertaining.
It also means things like doctrinal fidelity and church discipline become really critical.
They have to be. If you tolerate false teaching or open sin in the church, you are bringing reproach upon God's name. To hallow his name means to guard the purity and the truth of his church.
The analogy our sources use for this shift is powerful. The mirror and the window.
Yeah, a self-centered life is like a mirror. Everything I do, my prayers, my work, it's all about reflecting my own needs, my comfort, my image back at me.
And praying, hallowed be your name, does what to that mirror?
It shatters it. It replaces that inward-looking mirror with a perfectly clear window. The goal of my life is no longer about my own reflection. It's about giving the world a clear, unobstructed view of the glory of God on the other side.
So our lives become the frame for that window.
That's the goal. That God's name would be seen clearly through the window of our lives and our churches.
And the power of this isn't just in the words, it's in the structure of the whole prayer that follows.
The whole model is split into two halves, and that structure is theological teaching all by itself.
It's designed to put God's glory first.
Right. You have the first half, which is entirely Godward. It's the first three petitions.
Hallowed be your name, your kingdom come, your will be done.
All of them are about God's agenda, his honor, his rule. The focus is completely on him.
And then you get the second half, which is about our human needs.
3 essential areas. Give us this day our daily bread, which is our physical provision.
Forgive us our debts, which is our spiritual need for reconciliation.
And deliver us from evil, which is our need for moral protection and perseverance.
And the order is deliberate. It's teaching us where the center of gravity has to be.
It is. It's teaching that God's name and kingdom and will are more central, more pressing than our next meal or our personal safety.
So when we do get to asking for our daily bread, we're asking with a qualification.
Yes. We're asking for provision so that we can be equipped to keep living for the first 3 petitions. The second half serves the first.
You're asking, Father, give me the strength for today so that I can live for your glory today.
Our needs are sanctified when they're placed under the priority of his glory. The sources use that great analogy of building a house.
Right. The first half of the prayer, the Godward petitions, that's the foundation.
It has to be. You can't build anything that will last without a solid foundation. And the foundation of all reality is God's glory, his kingdom, his will.
And our needs, the bread, the forgiveness, the protection, that's the superstructure. The walls and the roof and the rooms where we actually live our lives.
That's where we spend our time, right? Dealing with bills and sickness and sin. But those rooms will collapse if they aren't built on and constrained by the foundation of God's glory.
The foundation has to come first.
It has to. And it has to define the shape and the strength of everything else. This is why Jesus said, pray like this. It teaches us to start big with God and then move to our smaller story, always seeing our needs in light of his eternal purposes.
So the real point of prayer isn't to get God to change my circumstances.
No. The point is to align my heart with His will so that His name is magnified through my circumstances, whatever they turn out to be.
This has been a deep look at a line we thought we knew. We started by clearing away all the wrong ideas about prayer, the performative and the mechanical.
And we landed on the correct posture. That we're talking to a Father who is both our intimate Father and our sovereign King in heaven, a balance of intimacy and majesty.
And most of all, we found the absolute non-negotiable priority. Hallowed be your name. God's glory, not our need, is the controlling aim of a believer's life.
And, if we're honest with ourselves, that focus on hallowing God's name ought to show us how much we fail. Our self-centered prayers, our casualness, the way we so quickly put our physical comfort ahead of His honor. It all proves that we don't naturally do this perfectly.
And that failure, that realization, it could lead to despair. Who among us can say we perfectly revere God in every moment? But that's where the gospel comes in.
It has to, because Jesus Christ did perfectly hallow the Father's name. Every second of His life was lived in perfect, reverent awe of the Father. He fulfilled this prayer on our behalf.
And on the cross, He carried the guilt for all of our irreverence.
So we get to pray this prayer not based on our own strength or our own record, but relying completely on the perfect record of the one who taught it to us.
So we'll leave you with this question to think about. The next time you face a crisis in your own daily life, a financial problem, a health issue, a big decision, what would it look like to start by focusing not on your need for relief, but on Christ's perfect hallowing of the Father's name and the priority of God's kingdom? How does that change the way you approach the problem?